and how's it going, everyone? It is Skullzi here with the latest gaming news, rumors, and speculation. And today's video is going to be a lot of fun, as we're going to be doing some speculative alchemy. No, we're not going to be combining a giant's toe with like some kind of ectoplasm from a ghost. We're going to be combining known, confirmed information regarding the various factions within Starfield, along with some in-depth speculation regarding how I think these factions in the game world may actually work, or more importantly, how I'd personally love for them to work, and how they should work in a perfect world. But is this a perfect world? I guess we'll find out at the end of 2022. Like I said though, this video will indeed involve a healthy dose of speculation, but it's all based on the confirmed information known so far that I broke down in the previous video. If you haven't watched my recent video where I break down everything there is to know about the various factions so far in Starfield, then I highly suggest you do so before watching this video. You can easily check it out by clicking on the screen here, or just wait for the cliff racer I sent your way to show up angrily as they do. So yes, it is indeed confirmed that Starfield will have various factions within the game world, and there is a surprising amount of information about these factions already. However, what is still unknown is how these factions operate on a gameplay level, which is perhaps the most interesting way, no doubt. It is of course much easier to just write factions into the game's world and lore, and to just place these factions as static NPCs and just randomly generated patrols within the game world, than it is to actually create living, evolving factions that respond to not only the actions of the player, but also the various actions of the other in-game factions as well, and perhaps even that RNG itself. After all, Bethesda Game Studios are no strangers to that RNG, and for those that don't know what RNG is, it stands for Random Number Generation, and basically stands for the in-game engine running various calculations based on different variables upon variables to decide things like what kind of loot you get in the random chest, what random events you encounter on the road that day, and whether or not the game hates you that moment and decides to spawn something that no doubt will kill you and cause you to save scum a previous save. Some games literally breathe the RNG as a main gameplay mechanic. Games like Project Zomboid, Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, and even XCOM in some ways, and RNG is a huge part of game development, and alongside this, RNG is no stranger to Bethesda Game Studios, as they have actually developed in-house RNG built specifically for their game engine and games alike. Radiant AI, for example, has been in use since Oblivion, allowing NPCs in the game world to go about various tasks that make it seem like they're actually living realistic lives within the game world itself. And this very same technology has been utilized in basically every other Bethesda Game Studios RPG from that point forward, evolving and improving over time. With Skyrim, Bethesda took this technology even further by developing Radiant Story, a way for new quests and storylines to be added organically into the game world, creating an almost endless stream of quests and content. And although this technology was interesting and indeed impressive, the quests themselves obviously were overshadowed by other in-game quests that were crafted entirely by the developers themselves. Still though, this added a lot more game content and actual believable and good game content, which is never a bad thing, and at the same time showcased just how promising and versatile these Radiant technologies might be, Bethesda's own little in-house RNG. With that in mind, it is all but confirmed basically that the same technology should no doubt be used in Starfield and even the Elder Scrolls 6, but at the same time be vastly improved and overhauled for the next generation of gaming, as both Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6 will be Bethesda Game Studios' first next-gen only RPGs. And yes, I know, it's not technically next-gen anymore, but whatever. It makes it easier to explain for the purposes of this video. Leave me alone, blame the skooma. And it's this exact Radiant technology that I think could set factions apart in future Bethesda Game Studios RPGs as well. In Starfield, the Elder Scrolls 6, and beyond. They could even name it Radiant Faction, as that seems to fit the overall theme here, and I already know exactly how this system could work and how it could set Bethesda Game Studios RPGs apart from almost every other single RPG out there to date. Imagine the following scene, if you will. It's the winter of 2022. You fire up Starfield. You still can't believe the game is finally out, even though you've been playing it for a few weeks now. The Starfield memes are fire. It's a great time to be alive. You wake up in your captain's quarters in your ship within Starfield, and obviously not real life unless you're like Elon Musk, I guess. You walk over to your computer in-game and check recent updates from around surrounding space. You see the Free Star Collective has won a battle against the United Colonies, taken over a military outpost on the moon of planet Jemison. You see the Crimson Fleet has a new warband chief, Victor the Cruel, and now pirate raids will be a lot more common as long as Victor the Cruel is their leader. You see the settlement of Crete has a new governor as well, one who the populace doesn't seem to like or be all that happy with, as the corrupt governor has increased taxes to line his pockets, and as a result, all prices in Crete have increased by 25%, which sucks as that is your main source of space fuel right now, so you're going to be be paying a lot more for that space fuel unless you decide to do something about it. News stories and updates like this happen on an almost daily basis and in a believable way, depending on what's going on within the game's world. Because that's right, none of this was actually planned or written to happen at this exact moment by Bethesda. Well, they no doubt developed this mechanic and typed up all the various possible news reports we could see. What I mean by this is all the events and stuff that happen in the game world happen organically, based on that RNG's reaction to what the player does and what the other in-game factions do as well. No longer are factions randomly spawned NPC patrols, limited to their written quest lines and their settlements. Instead, if Bethesda creates a Radiant faction system like I envision, factions could literally be something new altogether. They could fight each other for territory, changing the scope and vibe of the game world depending on which faction has power and where. There could literally be huge frontline battles as two factions fight in a high-paced and violent space war. They could recruit new members, attempting to replenish numbers lost in previous battles, as yes indeed, these factions could indeed be wiped out completely. And on top of all this, the same goes for faction leaders as well, as depending on what leader leads a faction, that could change how the faction responds to certain things in the game world. For example, one leader could be a lot more warlike and immediately start declaring war on other factions, or another leader could be corrupt, not declaring war but instead increasing taxes and maybe opening up smuggling lanes and things like that. A cunning player could even forge a relationship with a possible candidate for a faction leader of a particular faction before assassinating that current leader, so the player NPC's friend can take their place, granting them special bonuses and rewards from that specific faction as long as that leader is still in power. Certain factions can offer the player certain rewards as well. Maybe one faction can give a player they revere access to rare ships, or perhaps another one rare weapons. Another faction can offer military backup whenever the player calls for it, and perhaps another faction a steady stream of income from their profitable trade routes and space marketplaces. These factions notice what the player character does as well, and depending on the player's standing with said faction and what the player has done, the factions can either decide to attack the player and hunt them down, ignore them altogether and perceive them as not a threat at all, or even attempt to contact a player to offer a quest which, by the way, is generated based on what the faction leader believes would actually benefit that faction at that given time, and a quest that the player can accomplish or fail, or even ignore, all of which will actually alter the faction war and the game world altogether. This would not only add consistent, almost endless new content into the game, something Bethesda clearly wants to do with Radiant Story, but at the same time, this would almost create a living and breathing RPG world, that which we have never really before seen in gaming ever. And if this Radiant faction system works perfectly like I envision, it could seamlessly add hours upon hours of content into the game world just on its own completely. And if you combine that with a huge, explorable, and amazing open world, along an interesting main story and unique and captivating characters, then Starfield could very well not only be one of the most amazing RPGs ever, but one of the greatest games of all time. And like I said, if this type of system is indeed in Starfield, that means it would also be in the Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 5, and beyond, improved with each and every game. Remember though, this is mostly my own speculation based on already confirmed in-game systems that Bethesda Game Studios uses and has used for some time now, and combined with confirmed information known so far about the factions in Starfield. I do actually believe though that this is a likely goal that Bethesda Game Studios is working towards, and if we don't see something 100% like this in Starfield, then we no doubt will see a big step towards it, a step that will no doubt be taken even further with each prospective future Bethesda Game Studios release from that point forward. In my opinion though, I think there's a pretty solid chance we'll see something like this in Starfield, or at least I can only but hope. That's gonna finish up today's video though. As always, what I want to know is, what do you think about all this? Let me know what you think about my idea down in the comments below, or how you think factions will work in Starfield. Do you think I'm dreaming a little bit too much here? Let me know down in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoy the content, be sure to give the video a thumbs up. It actually helps out a lot. And if you enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe, and if you're already subscribed, check to make sure you're still subscribed, because that YouTube algorithm does randomly unsubscribe people. I would greatly appreciate it, as the algorithm really pays attention only to channels that are gaining subscribers. And if you want to go above and beyond to support the channel and the community, you can support the channel over on Coffee, Patreon, or here on YouTube as an exclusive channel member. Links for all this and more are down in the description below, and as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time when Bethesda develops Radiant Todd Howard, who just endlessly creates games until the end of time.
It just works.